In the world of entertainment, especially where reality television blends with personality-driven storytelling, people often take on larger-than-life identities that feel almost like wrestling personas. Names become brands, and personalities become characters that audiences recognize instantly. If Corey Harrison were placed in that kind of exaggerated wrestling universe, his nickname, Big Hoss, would already fit perfectly into that mold: loud, memorable, and rooted in strength and presence rather than subtlety. Wrestling names often reflect attitude, reputation, or physicality, and Corey's public image on television carries a similar energy even outside the ring. He is not a performer in a scripted sport, but his role on screen often places him in dramatic negotiations, heated family discussions, and high-pressure decisions that resemble staged confrontations in wrestling storylines. In that sense, his personality becomes part businessman, part entertainer, and part reluctant public figure. The idea of wrestling names also reflects how people repackage identity for audience appeal. If Corey had a wrestling alter ego beyond Big Hoss, it might emphasize his negotiation power, his inherited business legacy, or even his reputation for stubborn decision-making. But beneath all that branding and spectacle, there is still a real person navigating expectations, family pressure, and personal struggles while being watched by millions. That contrast between persona and reality becomes a central theme in understanding his life story. The Harrison Family Foundation and the birth of a pawn empire. The story of Corey Harrison cannot be told without understanding the family foundation that shaped his entire world. The Harrison family legacy began long before television cameras arrived, rooted in a small pawn shop vision that slowly grew into a cultural phenomenon. Richard Benjamin Harrison, known as the Old Man, laid the groundwork with a modest second-hand shop that reflected practical hustle more than ambition for fame. His son Rick Harrison expanded that vision with relentless energy, combining business instinct with an understanding of value, negotiation, and opportunity. Together, they created a family ecosystem where buying, selling, and evaluating items became a daily rhythm of life. Corey grew up inside this environment rather than outside of it, absorbing its language, habits, and expectations from an early age. Unlike traditional career paths where skills are learned later, Corey's education began at the counter of a pawn shop, where every customer interaction became a lesson in human behavior and financial decision-making. The family dynamic was not only professional but deeply personal, blending business disagreements with generational mentorship. This unique upbringing created both opportunity and pressure, as Corey was not just an employee in the business, but a future continuation of a family legacy that had already begun to attract attention far beyond Las Vegas. From a small coin shop to a licensed pawn operation in Las Vegas. The transformation of the Harrison family business into a fully licensed pawn operation was not a simple or immediate process. It involved years of persistence, legal limitations, and strategic timing in a city where regulations tightly controlled the number of pawn licenses available. Las Vegas law historically restricted the issuance of new pawn licenses based on population thresholds, creating a competitive and bureaucratic barrier for anyone trying to enter the industry. Rick Harrison and his father worked around these limitations by running a coin shop and building credibility while waiting for an opportunity to expand. The moment the city's population reached the required threshold, they moved quickly to secure a license, demonstrating both patience and business awareness. By the late 1980s, they successfully established the gold and silver pawn shop on Las Vegas Boulevard, positioning themselves in a location that would later become iconic. This step marked a turning point, transforming a small family operation into a formal business capable of handling larger financial transactions, higher value items, and a broader customer base. For Corey, who was still growing up during this period, the shop represented stability, identity, and expectation all at once. It was not just a workplace, but a developing legacy that he would eventually be expected to help carry forward, building value, reputation, and early financial success. Once the pawn shop was fully operational, its growth reflected both the expanding tourism of Las Vegas and the increasing reputation of the Harrison family's negotiation skills. Over time, the shop evolved from a modest business into a high-traffic location, dealing in diverse and often unusual items. Jewelry became one of the most common categories, but the shop also handled collectibles, sports memorabilia, and rare artifacts that attracted both casual sellers and serious buyers. Financially, the business grew into a multi-million-dollar operation, generating significant annual revenue through interest and resale margins. This success was not accidental. It was the result of calculated risk-taking, careful evaluation, and experience in understanding value beyond surface appearance. Corey, growing up in this environment, witnessed firsthand how deals were made and how profit margins were protected. However, he also saw the less glamorous side of the business, including customers in financial distress, gamblers seeking quick cash, and individuals parting with personal items under pressure. This duality shaped his understanding of money as both opportunity and necessity. The shop became not just a financial enterprise but a microcosm of human behavior, where desperation, nostalgia, and ambition often intersected at the counter. The transition from local pawn shop to television fame. The leap from a local business to international television fame did not happen overnight. It required persistence, pitching, and a willingness to reimagine the pawn shop as entertainment. Rick Harrison spent years attempting to develop a television concept centered around the shop, facing repeated rejections before finally gaining traction. The breakthrough came when production companies recognized the potential of combining real transactions with compelling personalities and historical items. The format eventually evolved into a reality series that highlighted not just the objects being bought and sold, but also the personalities behind the counter. Corey, along with his father Rick and grandfather Richard, became central figures in this new narrative format. The show introduced audiences to their dynamic, blending humor, tension, and negotiation into each episode. What made it successful was not scripted drama, but the unpredictability of real customer interactions. Viewers were drawn to the authenticity of the environment, where every item carried a story and every negotiation carried stakes. As the show gained popularity, the pawn shop itself transformed into a tourist destination, turning everyday business operations into televised entertainment watched by millions across the world. Corey Harrison's role as Big Hoss in the family dynamic. Within the television series, Corey Harrison emerged as a central figure, often referred to by his nickname, Big Hoss. His role was not just operational, but symbolic, representing the next generation of the family business. As he grew older, Corey took on increasing responsibility, managing staff, evaluating items, and making purchasing decisions on behalf of the shop. His presence on screen often reflected the tension between tradition and modernization, especially in his interactions with his father Rick and grandfather Richard. These moments were sometimes humorous, sometimes confrontational, but always rooted in differing perspectives on value and risk. Corey's knowledge of inventory and market trends often clashed with Rick's more cautious approach, creating debates that became a defining feature of the show. Despite disagreements, there was an underlying structure of mentorship, where experience and new thinking continuously collided. Corey's development from a young worker into a decision-maker was visible to audiences over time, making his journey part of the show's long-term narrative arc. His identity as Big Hoss became more than a nickname. It became a representation of responsibility, expectation, and the challenge of stepping into a legacy while trying to shape an independent identity within it. Fame, pressure, and the hidden strain behind television success. As Pawn Stars grew into a global success, the pressure on its main cast members increased significantly. For Corey Harrison, fame brought visibility but also scrutiny. Being part of a widely watched reality show meant that personal behavior, decisions, and even mistakes were amplified beyond normal private life. The demands of filming schedules, combined with the responsibilities of managing a real business, created a constant balancing act. While audiences saw humor, negotiation, and entertainment, the reality behind the scenes involved long hours, financial risk assessment, and public expectations. Corey's position placed him in the center of this pressure, where he was expected to perform both as a businessman and a television personality. Over time, this visibility contributed to stress and personal challenges that occasionally surfaced in public incidents. Fame did not eliminate the realities of personal struggle. Instead, it often intensified them by removing privacy. For Corey, this meant living under constant observation while still trying to navigate normal life experiences. The contrast between public image and private reality became increasingly significant, revealing that success in entertainment does not necessarily shield individuals from internal or external challenges. A night of controversy and public backlash. One of the most widely discussed incidents in Corey Harrison's public life occurred during a night of heavy partying that escalated into controversial behavior at a bar. What began as a social outing quickly turned into a situation involving excessive drinking, inappropriate actions, and public disruption. Reports described behavior that shocked both patrons and staff, resulting in immediate backlash once details became public. In the age of media amplification, such incidents spread quickly, turning private mistakes into widely discussed controversies. Corey later acknowledged the situation and expressed regret, stating that his actions were not reflective of his character or values. This moment became a turning point in public perception, highlighting how quickly reputation can be affected by a single incident. It also revealed the pressure that comes with fame, where personal lapses are magnified under public scrutiny. While apologies helped address the situation, the event remained part of his public narrative. It served as a reminder that public figures are still human, capable of mistakes that carry consequences beyond their immediate environment. The burden of a television identity that never really turns off. For Corey Harrison, one of the most persistent challenges has been living with a television identity that doesn't switch off when filming ends. Big Hoss is not just a character name used on screen. It becomes a label that follows him into everyday life, shaping how people interact with him in public spaces, business dealings, and even personal moments. When a reality show runs for years and reaches global audiences, the distinction between person and persona begins to blur. Corey is constantly recognized, approached, and interpreted through the lens of edited episodes rather than full lived experience. That creates a strange imbalance where people feel they know him intimately while he is still trying to maintain boundaries around his private self. The pawn shop, once a local business, also becomes a stage where performance and real work overlap. Every negotiation, disagreement, or joke is no longer just an internal shop moment, but potential broadcast content. This creates pressure to remain consistent with a public image that may not always reflect internal reality. Over time, this can lead to fatigue, as maintaining a public identity requires constant awareness of how actions may be perceived, clipped, replayed, or discussed by millions of viewers who only see fragments of a much larger life. The psychological weight of growing up in a family business spotlight. Growing up inside a family business that eventually becomes globally famous carries a unique psychological burden that is difficult to replicate in ordinary career paths. Corey Harrison did not choose the pawn shop environment later in life. He was born into it and raised within its walls, meaning his identity developed alongside the business itself. This creates a situation where personal achievements and family legacy become deeply intertwined, making separation between who I am and what I represent extremely difficult. In many families, children can explore different career paths before settling into their identity, but Corey's exposure was immediate and constant. Every lesson he learned about money, negotiation, and responsibility came directly from his father and grandfather, often in the same space where customers were actively buying and selling goods. This environment can produce strong practical skills, but also intense expectations. As the business grows in fame, so does the expectation that the next generation will not only maintain it, but also elevate it. That expectation can feel like both opportunity and pressure at the same time, especially when millions of viewers begin to associate the family name with entertainment success as much as with business competence. How fame alters relationships with friends, family, and strangers. Fame fundamentally changes how relationships function, and Corey Harrison's life provides a clear example of this shift. Before television exposure, interactions within the pawn shop were primarily transactional or local community-based. After fame, every interaction carries an additional layer of awareness because recognition becomes immediate. Friends may begin to experience indirect pressure from public perception, while strangers may approach interactions with expectations shaped by what they have seen on screen. Even family relationships can become complicated when business discussions are simultaneously entertainment content. In such environments, private disagreements can take on public dimensions, and casual conversations can be interpreted as dramatic moments. This changes the natural flow of communication as individuals begin to self-monitor more carefully. Corey's relationships have likely been influenced by this shift, where trust, familiarity, and authenticity must coexist with public attention. Strangers often assume familiarity because they have watched hours of television content, while real personal relationships require time, nuance, and boundaries that television cannot fully capture. Over time, this creates a unique social environment where Corey must constantly navigate between openness and protection of privacy, even in everyday interactions that would normally feel simple or routine. Motorcycle accident and the reality of physical risk. Another significant moment in Corey Harrison's life occurred when he was involved in a serious motorcycle accident. What initially seemed like a routine ride turned dangerous when mechanical failure led to loss of control. In a split-second decision, Corey had to react quickly to avoid a more severe outcome, ultimately sustaining injuries that required medical attention and surgery. The accident resulted in broken bones and the insertion of hardware to stabilize the damage. Despite the severity of the situation, Corey's response demonstrated resilience as he returned to normal activities relatively quickly. This incident highlighted the unpredictability of physical risk and the importance of quick decision-making in dangerous situations. It also added another layer to his public narrative, showing that beyond television and business responsibilities, real-life dangers are always present. Recovery required both physical healing and adjustment, reinforcing the idea that even individuals accustomed to high-pressure environments are still vulnerable to sudden life-altering events. Family tension and ownership expectations within the business. As Corey matured within the family business, discussions around ownership and long-term control became increasingly important. At one point, tensions surfaced regarding his role in the company and his future stake in its operations. These conversations were not unusual in family businesses, where generational transition often involves negotiation and differing expectations. Corey expressed interest in having a more defined ownership position, reflecting his years of contribution and operational responsibility. These discussions occasionally led to disagreements with his father, particularly around decision-making authority and financial structure. However, rather than resulting in separation, the conflict ultimately led to partial resolution and increased responsibility within the business. Corey was eventually granted a stake in the operation, reinforcing his position as a key figure in its future direction. This outcome reflected both negotiation and compromise, showing that family businesses often evolve through internal tension rather than smooth transitions. It also demonstrated Corey's determination to secure a meaningful role within the legacy he had been part of since childhood. Legal and rental controversies that tested public image. In a separate incident, Corey Harrison became involved in a dispute related to a rented recreational vehicle that was allegedly returned in damaged condition. The situation escalated when the owner reported significant issues, including interior damage and missing or broken components. Claims were made regarding financial responsibility for repairs, leading to legal and insurance discussions. Corey's representatives disputed aspects of the claims, stating that insurance coverage and mechanical issues were part of the situation. However, the incident still attracted public attention due to his celebrity status. Cases like this demonstrate how rental agreements and property disputes can become amplified when involving public figures. Even when details are contested, the perception of responsibility often becomes part of public discourse. For Corey, this situation added another layer to his already complex public image, reinforcing the idea that fame often brings legal and financial scrutiny beyond everyday experiences. It also highlighted the importance of documentation and accountability in transactions involving high-value or shared-use property. Relationships, marriages, and personal life. Challenges. Corey Harrison's personal life has included multiple relationships and marriages, each reflecting different stages of his life and career. His first marriage began during a period of relative stability, but eventually ended in divorce, influenced by factors such as demanding work schedules and lifestyle pressures. Later, he entered another marriage that also ended after a relatively short period, though the separation was described as more amicable. These relationships brought both emotional connection and public attention, as aspects of his personal life were often discussed in media due to his television presence. In addition to marriages, Corey has been linked to other relationships that attracted speculation and public interest. Like many individuals in the public eye, maintaining privacy in personal matters proved challenging. His experiences reflect the complexity of balancing personal relationships with a career that involves constant visibility. Emotional highs and lows, combined with professional demands, contributed to a personal journey marked by both connection and separation, illustrating that public success does not eliminate private struggles. Later legal troubles and continued public scrutiny. In more recent years, Corey Harrison faced legal scrutiny following a traffic-related incident involving allegations of impaired driving. Reports indicated that he was stopped by law enforcement under suspicion of unsafe driving behavior, which led to field testing and further investigation. The incident resulted in formal booking procedures, adding to his history of public controversies. While details varied depending on reports, the situation contributed to renewed media attention and public discussion. Such incidents highlight how public figures often experience intensified consequences for legal issues due to their visibility. Even before outcomes are fully resolved, reputational impact can be immediate. For Corey, this event became another chapter in a series of challenges that have shaped public perception of his life outside television. It also reinforced the importance of accountability and the long-term effects that legal encounters can have on personal and professional reputation, family loss, personal tragedy, and enduring legacy. Beyond business, fame, and controversy, Corey Harrison's life has also been marked by deep personal loss. The passing of his grandfather, Richard, the Old Man Harrison, represented not only a family tragedy but also the end of a foundational era in the pawnshop's history. His death from illness deeply affected both the family and the broader audience who had followed the show for years. Additionally, Corey experienced the loss of his brother Adam, who struggled with addiction and passed away at a young age. This loss had a profound emotional impact, highlighting the often unseen struggles that exist within families regardless of public success. Corey publicly expressed grief and remembrance, sharing personal memories and acknowledging the bond they shared. These tragedies remind audiences that behind television personalities are real families dealing with real emotional pain. While Pawn Stars presents moments of negotiation and entertainment, the underlying reality includes loss, resilience, and continuity. Corey's journey, when viewed in full, reflects not only business success and controversy but also human vulnerability and endurance in the face of personal hardship and family change.